barakatuh. Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Mr. Jeff, who is our guest, an assessor from the Financial Accreditation Agency of Malaysia, and their brothers and sisters from the IIiBF Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance. On behalf of my colleague and I, Dr. Dauda Asafa, would like to welcome you to this program. Basically, the event is a CTP workshop, as they call it, Certified Training Professionals Workshop, and Mr. Jeff here is our assessor. The content we'll be discussing today will relate to what most of you are here to study relating to the TAKAFUL industry. The presentation order would be basically alternated. Dr. Dauda would start. Afterwards, I would also, take over and we alternate that. But as we switch from one person to the other, I will tell you what next topic is coming. It's supposed to be about 240 minutes of interaction, but good to say also that there will be in the process some forms of assessment that are basically to check if, let's say, you are following the discussion, or perhaps there are areas that needs further clarification. The assumption here is that hopefully, inshallah, some of you will become Sharia advisors in the Islamic financial services industry. But nonetheless, the whole outline itself is targeted at a very basic level of TAKAFUL. Not that we do not know from a theoretical point of view, but at least from the industry point of view, what are the certain things that you are expected to know as the Sharia advisor. So, in our outline, as we move along, there are certain learning outcomes which will be mentioned to you at the turn of every session, that at the end of the day we would expect that generally or overall you would have been very much familiarized with the expectation of the industry vis-a-vis the role of Sharia advisors in the TAKAFUL industry, because TAKAFUL itself presents its own peculiarity, unlike the Islamic capital market or the Islamic banking, as it were. So we are starting a bit behind schedule. We do not wish to spend further time on the introduction so that we can get to start the program proper. I learned that it's also exam period. Some of you may be hopping in and out, as the case may be. Hopefully other participants will be joining us in the course of the program. So I would have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Dauda Asafa to start with the first session. Thank you.
Everybody, Dauda Asafa. Basically, what we do next time is development of standard, which is and see what is the essence of the standard is to get the best practice. And today, as you said, we are focusing on TAKAFUL. So, and in TAKAFUL, we go straight, because of the time, we go straight to the topics proper. And so I'll take you through the TAKAFUL model and the underlying contract. So we assume, that you understand TAKAFUL, but that is from the theoretical aspect. So the industrial practice is what we discussed here. And as I'm taking you along, the first is we start with a short lecture, followed by a poster work, which is the training aids, and we follow it up with case study. Yeah? So the time is apportioned to each of these activities. First one, I will take 10 minutes for the short lecture, followed by the comers to see the posters identified there, again the case study. So I start. See, from the IFSB perspective of the survey conducted around the world, we discovered that there are 3 major TAKAFUL models that is employed. And these are the Mudaraba model, the Wakala model, and hybrid, which is the combination of Wakala and Mudaraba. So when we say Mudaraba, Wakala, and hybrid, what exactly does it mean? It's defines the relationship between the TAKAFUL operator and participant within the context of what? Of SHARIAH. Because this contract relationship will determine the obligation and the right and obligation of each of these stakeholders. I mean by stakeholder is the participant and the TAKAFUL operator. So from the other model, simply it is when a contract of Mudaraba. And when you say Mudaraba, Mudarib is like the participant is the capital provider, who is the Mudarib, right? And what of the TAKAFUL operator?
Market. Just like market, yeah.
What is that?
Just like you can put under Wakala and lucky the counter.
No, don't mix it together. So when I say Mudarib is the participant, what is the
of the agents?
Arupama, yes, good. So the TAKAFUL operator, very good.
Come again?
Very good. So, and what you said now is for the Wakala. When there's agency, Wakala is when there's agency relationship between the TAKAFUL operator and what? And the participant. So here, in the Mudaraba model, so both the underwriting and the investment activity of the TAKAFUL undertaking are taken according to that contract, which is pre-agreed profit share, pre-agreed sharing, right? And so the implication of this is that before the institution of the contract itself, so the percentage sharing ratio must have been determined. And after the signing of the contract, nobody should alter the agreement. Right? So we'll talk about the implications later in the case study. So for the Wakala model, which is like the TAKAFUL operator assume the position of agent. So in this case, there's agency relationship between the TAKAFUL operator and what? And the participant. So when we say that, so meaning that when the contributions gets to the TAKAFUL operator, they deduct their management fee in form of what? In form of Wakala. Right? And in this case, they don't have any right to share in the surplus as well as in the investment activity. In investment planning, right? That is the basis of the Wakala. For the hybrid, which is the combination of Mudaraba and Wakala, here the management fee is taken up front. For what? For the underwriting activity. But for the investment activity, there is pre-agreed profit sharing ratio. Understand? Okay. With that now, I want us to be in 3 groups. So as we sit down, brother, so I want each group to come out and see the poster here. So as a form of demonstration, okay.
quickly, sorry, please. I have interest in this TAKAFUL, but I think for me to be carried along, because this is my first time of hearing it, I would have loved a bit the operational definition of those terms so that I can.
Thank you, because we do that in our case study. Because of we are pressed with time, we want to cover a lot, and that's why we take it straight to this. Please come out, see. While we are doing it, I will explain it. That's the essence. It's even good for you to see that. See. Let me go. This is good. You can take it to your free, don't worry. See, this is Modern there. There, this is a participant. So there's a contribution here. Because outside like there's a product. When you subscribe to the product, we do that in the case study. There, so the participant signed the contract, a started contribution, right? This contribution goes to the TAKAFUL fund, which is policyholder fund, right? So from the policyholder fund, so the policyholder fund is the underwriting activity, is where the underwriting activity takes place. And underwriting means claim payment, right? So, and who manage the fund? The TAKAFUL operator. So, and how does it remunerated? Through the profit sharing agreement, right? So, and this agreement must be the sharing ratio must be predetermined before the contract agreement, right? So, and so for this, in surplus as well, they share in the surplus. So, for the for the hybrid, that goes to the hybrid. The TAKAFUL operator, upon getting the contributions, it goes to the TAKAFUL fund. So from the TAKAFUL fund, it got its upfront management fee, which is the wakala fee, right? So the wakala fee is the management fee taken from the policyholder fund, right? Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So from here, there in the investments, it also just the TAKAFUL operator doesn't share in the investment activity because all its remuneration is being taken up front from the contributions, right? Okay, good. For hybrid, so it's simply combination of what? Wakala, management fee from the beginning, and the profit sharing ratio of the investment earnings, right? That is it. So any question?
Here, the profit is shared between the participant and the operator, right? And here, no profit sharing, but from the contribution they get the fees, the operator.
Exactly.
And the surplus is usually the participant's portion.
It's not function.
Is the participant.
Exactly.
Here, from the contribution, they receive the fees,
Yes.
like operator. But then, if there is like surplus, then who they also is it they receive the fees also in case of surplus they also receive the profit portion. That means they need to
That's it. That's hybrid here. So that's what they call hybrid. So the surplus here is being termed as performance fee. Because what they see here is that okay, if they give surplus here, it will create incentive for the operator to continue to manage the fund very well, so that they can continue to get the what? The surplus. So here surplus is termed as a form of incentive. Okay? Alright? Okay. Second group. Okay, let's go to second and third group. Come together. And come together so that we explain it. All right. So I believe we can see from the poster, Mudaraba model, right? So this is TAKAFUL operator. The hope is that the operation model of TAKAFUL, right? So this is TAKAFUL participant. So TAKAFUL participant contributes that's their contribution upon subscribing to a product, right? And agreeing to pay some contributions. So the basic principle will be delivered in the next session, right? So no problem, brother. So here, the TAKAFUL fund and the investment is being managed at a pre-agreed ratio. That is Mudaraba model. So for the hybrid, the difference is that in the TAKAFUL fund, the management fee, which is wakala, is being taken upfront. But for the investment, they share, the TAKAFUL operators share in the profit, hearing from investment. And for the wakala, apart from taking the management fee, no, TAKAFUL doesn't share in the surplus arriving from the investment activity. So these are the three distinct models being employed around the world. So now I have a case for you. So the case is derived from they call it disclosure sheet. Have you heard it before? So there's a disclosure sheet that when you subscribe to a product, then they will give you all the agreements, the terms and agreement, the conditions, that the exclusiveness, and how it operates. So the disclosure sheet that contains the contract wording is what we use as a case study now. So I will share it with you in your group. So I will give you 15 minutes to study the case, then 15 minutes to present the case. So go back to your
Sorry, I want to ask one thing.
all right. Yes.
As one of the instance, right?
No! See, what happens is that, because the TAKAFUL operator is the one that manages the investment activity of the risk fund, that is the fund, they manage it as an investment manager. So they are entitled to some percentage of the returns produced by that fund. So that is where the hybrid model comes in. Already in this model, they have already deducted their management fee right away from the contributions at the onset. I think this is answer, yeah? What? Performance fee. Yeah, that's surplus. So that is 100 minus X represent their share of the surplus. Right? Yeah.
This is the surplus portion.
Yes.
So they're getting profit.
They got, but here, TAKAFUL operator doesn't share the surplus. Doesn't share the surplus. We explain in the case study. That's why the case is. That's why the case is. That's why the case is important, because. Okay, good. So. No, it's different. So it's like you have to work together as a group, then so you work together as a group, you study it. You work together as a group. So it's, you look at it, I give you 15 minutes to look at it. Huh? Okay. No. Okay. Six. Okay, please. Yeah. TAKAFUL model and control. So this is, so read it. In 10 minutes, then we discuss the
Only
No, ABC. Oh, look at ABC. ABC. So you will, what you are going to do here, look at the required. The required is, our friend puts the required there. Yeah. So you will, each of this case, you will identify the model for each case. That is your, and you explain. There is this, there's a question there. There is the question of surplus there. Does it entitle to the surplus? You have to state it. So, I'm counting the clock. The clock is ringing.
So maybe now.
So you have to work together. Discuss together.
Can I just pretend like I didn't get all the tasks this night, you know? Because there's someone giving me this, but it don't.
So, whenever you are ready, I'm waiting for you. Whoever is ready, if you like.
So, will you do this this one?
Yeah? Okay. All the So, for you to understand the three models and the underlying contract as well. So you have to do all the three. Not that.
This one case A.
No, not that. It's different. This is one. Oh.
But one there, right? Another one. This is the same also. One more.
That one is for another session. This one? Same. Don't worry, next. Don't worry. That's the next section. Don't worry. So look at this. Same copy, see. A, C, you look at C. A, B, C. A, B, C. The first one is, look, the first one is TAKAFUL motor car comprehensive cover. The second one is TAKAFUL MRA. And the third case is TAKAFUL house owner. Right? No different. Yeah. You have to discuss together. The group work. So the time is going. We are pressed time. Time is going. Okay, Wakala, right? The management fee, they are only entitled to management fee. 100%. Hello. They are not entitled to risk fund, they are entitled to surplus 100%. The surplus goes to the risk fund for the participants.
The surplus.
The surplus for the Wakala.
They are not giving the
Asafa don't share in the surplus. You have to determine that. That is the Sharia. That is why the Sharia says that they cannot. I want you to determine that. When I say they only share the surplus. So that is the question for Sharia. We will discuss when we are talking about where we are discussing the case. Finish? All right. Come down, someone should present. So, the presentation will be 2 minutes only. So, after somebody, only one. So, please listen. Okay? Walaikum salam.
So for case A, TAKAFUL motor for private car. So our group have discussed and we have determined that it is the Mudharabah model and hence it is entitled to the surplus. So our justification for Mudharabah model is based on a few things. So first, if you look at paragraph 2, at the end of it, it will say that in return, the TAKAFUL operator is remunerated by a predetermined percentage share. So means pre-agreed ratio. So that phrase indicates that this is a Mudharabah model. And any surplus arising from the general TAKAFUL fund will also be shared and allocated between general TAKAFUL fund, which is the participants fund, and also TAKAFUL operator, with the proportion of 60% and 40%. Right. So to answer question number 1, in year 2005, out of 100,000 ringgit surplus generated, 40,000 will go to the TAKAFUL operator of the company, as per stated, 40% of the surplus, and 60,000 will be returned back to the participants fund or general TAKAFUL fund.
Okay, good. It's okay. So that's for case 1, right? So who is ready to do case 2? Yes, thank you for thank you for that.
Still working.
Ready?
She is correct.
Huh?
Correct.
He's correct. She is
That's
not.
what we did also.
Can you present case B?
I'm still studying it.
Who's ready to present now?
We didn't do it yet.
Ah.
No, we have limited.
Let them.
Okay. Continue. Case B.
Okay, for case B is Takaful Umrah.
All right.
Okay. Here we have found that here the model is actually Okala. Actually, how we determine that, because the Takaful operator here in para 2 line 2 we find that Takaful operator to carry out transactions on the participants' behalf to invest and manage the contribution in the general Takaful fund. And in 4th line, it's mentioned that as a return, the participant allows the Takaful operator to deduct certain amount, commonly known as administration fee. So here the Takaful operator is getting from the participant contribution, they are getting some amount as a fees, and remaining they will utilize, and any surplus arising from the GTF as determined by the Takaful operator will apply to settle any card owing to the Takaful operator. That means after, if they get any surpluses, then first they will meet the card of the company if they have, and the remaining they will give to the participants. So it means that, there is no talk about the surplus and the profit sharing ratio like that. So it seems that it's Okala model.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We have limited time to spend for C. Whoever is ready? No? Okay, if there's because we have limited time, C, good pay, right? Proceed.
I think it will be our easier. So the hybrid model, since it's combination of the Wakaful and Wakana and Model, yeah. So here clauses relating to this contract Takaful, that we have a house owners. The scheme provides certain clauses there that in case of damage to the building and content of the private dwelling and flat residence. The model itself is a hybrid, then both are entitled to surplus. I think that's where the hybrid comes.
Thank you. So, at least you have a, it's like, it's not for the detail, just an introduction, and I believe you know the theoretical aspect, that this is the practical approach to the contract, and so how it goes in the industry. So now I'm inviting my colleagues to present the next topic, which is core principle, in which he will answer what the question you posed to me the other time. So we put the fundamental principles of the topic.
Thank you.
All right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thanks so much. That was quite an impressive performance. Given that was the first session, I'm highly impressed, and I will take it right from where we stopped. Some few years ago, I would say about 20 years ago, or very slightly lesser than that, I just finished my first degree, and to the glory of God, I did quite well, so it was quite relatively easy to get a job. And settling down with the family was also quite fast, especially when you look at your colleagues, who are still struggling here. And I would say it's relatively fast, although there were some who were faster than mine. Then things would fall in place also. I got a car, then I had a kid, wife, and things like that. So you just feel like things are quite automatic, isn't it? and it was a very, very pleasant experience as a person. So if you have had a smooth run in your university, afterwards you got a job, you started a family, and so on and so forth, you really think that life itself is linear and things would always go that way. On a particular day, we went out with the family, my wife and I, and our son, then we had just one then, and the insecurity situation in the country was getting more and more dire. And I thought that, since we are driving very late at night, it's better we drive on high speed so that we don't get waylaid and things like that. As we were driving, suddenly there was this truck that was moving quite slow. It does not have any reflection light. The rear light also was not, functioning. And just as I was getting too close to it, suddenly I realized that yes, this is a truck that is moving slow. Then suddenly I veered off from its rear. I was struggling with the steering. Eventually I managed to stabilize. Then we drove off. Right at that moment, something struck me. And that was the reality that life itself is not linear. I was running away from one risk. I would not want my car that I'm able to get the money to buy to be snatched from me. But then in the process, I was even heading into another risk. Now let's take the first scenario. If the car was snatched, I didn't have an insurance policy to get it back. I never thought it was necessary anyway, because things were falling in place. If I had rammed the car into the truck and something happened, I didn't have any life insurance policy also. That would have been the beginning of the end, And suddenly it occurred to me, right there and then, that it's just very, very important that we have TAKAFUL policy. My name is Abideen. I'm from the IFSB, the Technical and Research Department, and my colleague earlier on had told you what IFSB does. So this is one of our core activities whereby we look at the various sectors in the Islamic banking and finance industry. So you would realize therefore that quite a number of us also, by the show of hands, other than our normal insurance policy we have to get because you cannot register your car, you cannot get a road tax if you don't have the insurance. Would you would you indicate by reason of your hands if you have other insurance policy? I'm not talking of the IIiBF policy also. I'm talking about your own personal policy. Would you have any? I recall when I was still here, there was a brother who were playing intercontinental football competition. He had just resumed. You understand what I'm saying? And he was so happy that yes, this is a football competition. I like to play football. The game had barely started when there was a pull-out from the flank and he was trying to contest with the head. He landed on his leg and he got a broken leg. Until the program ended, he was on crutches. Fortunately for him, he had paid the school fees and he was covered. Assuming he was there to pay school fees and he didn't have any insurance policy, what would have happened to him? The program would have been much more difficult. That's the kind of things we take for granted. That things would always fall in line, whereas we are as exposed as any other person walking on the surface of the earth. So therefore, what we are trying to emphasize is the fact that risk management is not alien to Islam. And risk management will also be when you take preventive measures against uncertainties. You never know what will happen, but at least you have edged by having a policy as such. Based on our survey at the IFSB, we have realized that one of the reasons why there is a low take-up of some of these policies would be because of religious reasons. At times it is awareness. People are not just aware, but often than not, especially in the less developed parts of the world, it is due to religious reasons because they think the way the original TAKAFUL and the conventional insurance is operated is not in line with the dictates of the Islamic principles. So before we go into these core principles of Tabarun, Ta'awun, and No Riba, which are the essential principles in TAKAFUL, I'd like us to watch this video and see if we can make any stuff of them.
Ma'arifa. Is it Mr. Hussam?
Yes.
I'm calling from New Life Hospital. Your friend Mr. Abu Bakr met in an accident and he's hospitalized.
What? When did this happen? How is he now?
He is out of danger now, but please do come urgently.
Thank you for informing. We will be there shortly.
Alhamdulillah, Abu Bakr is safe with no major injuries.
Let us not disturb him. He's sleeping.
Excuse me. Oh, Mr. Hussam, what are you doing here?
Came to see my friend Abu Bakr.
Oh, Abu Bakr is your friend. Ah, then he surely deserves extra care. Shall we go to our cabin?
Sure, doctor. By the way, how is Abu Bakr doing now?
Abu Bakr is now out of danger, but needs complete bed rest for a week. How is your work going on?
Good. These days people are more aware and purchasing TAKAFUL.
It is good they are getting covered now. TAKAFUL indeed gives the patients a very good protection. I just wanted to inform you that your friend Abu Bakr has not taken any TAKAFUL. Please go to reception, as they have been looking for you.
Can I complete the formalities for Abu Bakr?
Yes, sure, sir. I've been looking for you. Please fill the registration form, and this is the receipt.
Okay, I'll pay the required bill.
How are you feeling?
Alhamdulillah, much better and still in recovery mode. By the way, many thanks for taking care of me and paying my medical expenses.
No problem, Abu Bakr.
A friend in need is a friend indeed.
By the way, Abu Bakr, why have you not applied for TAKAFUL?
Yes, it was a mistake. I was aware of it, but was not quite clear on how it works.
How can you be so ignorant? Do you know Islam does not?
Okay, we'll just continue just a while. One of the things I'd like you to see here is just like I explained earlier, nobody is absolutely immune from risks in its entire ramifications. So as a result, we have to be preemptive. We have to take preemptive measures to ensure that at least we have a TAKAFUL. In this case, look at Mr. Abdullah. He was involved in an accident. He didn't have any TAKAFUL policy. Fortunately for him, he had a friend who had a policy. And the logic would like you to get from that is the fact that the person who is picking up the bill is not the person who was involved in the accident. So there is to an extent, some level of brotherhood going on, a mutual assistance. And that is the fundamental principle in TAKAFUL as it were. Then, just a short while, I'll just continue you.
Concept of insurance risk management. But promotes risk management with a few conditions: that there should not be speculation on risk for profit making, and that one's profit is not to be at the expense of others.
So again,
Can you please tell me what TAKAFUL is all about?
so listen.
TAKAFUL is a process or an arrangement amongst a group of persons to handle the injuries resulting from specific risk.
On what principle does TAKAFUL work?
Okay, before we go to the principle, he has just explained to his friend now what TAKAFUL is all about. And I think that was the question you were trying to raise earlier. That it is the pooling of funds together by certain people towards mitigating a specific risk when it occurs, as at when it occurs. But the whole idea here is that it is based on some core principles. One of these principles would be the principle of tabarruk, donation, gifts, contribution, as it were, and of course ta'awun, to say that to ensure that there is a form of mutual assistance. But when these funds are put together, it will look similar to what we have in the conventional, isn't it? Because even in conventional, you pay premium, the funds are put together. At times, you may not have to make any claim in years. I've been driving in Malaysia for the past almost 8 or 10 years. I've never had the incidence of going to the insurance to claim anything. Because from a behavioral finance concept also, you look at it like, you don't say because you have insurance policy, then you ram your car against the wall. You still be very careful when you are driving. But the point is, in the event that anything happens, you already have an insurance policy. So what differentiates that from the TAKAFUL arrangement is that in the case of TAKAFUL, the insured are also the owners of the fund. Unlike in conventional insurance, whereby the funds paid by the insured in terms of premium is actually owned by the insurance company. So that is what makes it different. Let's just listen to the core principles that we have here now.
TAKAFUL works on the principle of tabarru and ta'awun. The Arabic word tabarru is used to refer to a donation or gift, and the word ta'awun is used to refer to mutual assistance. In TAKAFUL, the participants make donations and assist mutually to tackle the risk of loss due to certain events.
Is TAKAFUL a recent development?
No, in fact, the concept of TAKAFUL originates from the Arabs' customary practices. These practices were recognized and allowed by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and thus the practice continued.
Brief me on the mechanism.
TAKAFUL participants make contributions as donations into an insurance fund. The resources of this fund are used to compensate any participant who encounters injury or loss, and a portion of the fund is invested in a Sharia-compliant profitable business. The insurance fund is managed either by a selected group of participants or a company against a specific fee.
Tell me about the relationship between the participants and the fund manager.
The relationship between the participants and the fund manager depends upon the TAKAFUL model adopted. Every TAKAFUL model is based on one of the Islamic structures.
What makes TAKAFUL different from conventional insurance?
TAKAFUL is free of the element of uncertainty, which is called gharar in Arabic, gambling, which is called masir in Arabic, and interest, which is riba. The surplus in the TAKAFUL fund belongs to the policyholders and is not treated as the profit to the fund.
Oh, I see. What are the different models adopted in TAKAFUL?
Sure, the commonly adopted models are the mudaraba, wakala, waqf, and hybrid model.
Okay, we'll leave it there. That pretty much fits into what Dr. Dauda had mentioned. You have heard about the various models. You have also had an assessment where you have explained how the models work. And most importantly is that there are three core principles here that have been mentioned. And these are the ta'awun, the tabarru, as well as the lack of or no riba in the TAKAFUL operation. Now, these core principles are very, very important to the extent that when a policyholder makes his contribution to the TAKAFUL fund, it will be split into two. There is an aspect that will be captured under the donation, and there will be the other aspect that will be channeled into subsequent investments. Or else the TAKAFUL business also will die. Because the money is not theirs, so there will be an instance where on the one side they are operating as a wakala, as an agent, and on the other side whereby they are operating as a mudari. Is that okay? Whereby they are using the funds there. So you would have the policy risk fund, a participant risk fund, and the participant investment fund. The investment part will be channeled into investment that would yield funds on the basis of which the profit generated would be split on their agreed sharing ratio, whereas on the other side, whenever any eventuality occurred, they would now take from that to mitigate that for among the participants who suffers any injury. Now, the concept of mutual assistance is very important here. So it follows therefore that the moment the funds are paid, when you channel funds into the TAKAFUL, there is an understanding that it is with the intent of mutual assistance. That if anything happens to any of the participants, that will be used to, assist them. So the concept of profit is not the fundamental motive for going into this. It is the instance of willing to assist each person when the need arises. But most importantly is the fact that the funds, of course, in Islam, the source has to be pure, and the means into which you are channeling it also has to be pure. So in this case, therefore, the investment that the TAKAFUL company would engage in would be such that involves no usury, and as we mentioned earlier, it will also involve no maisir, no gharar. So things will be very clear. There is no uncertainty and there is no element of gambling, as it were. So these are the core principles in TAKAFUL. Now these principles, regardless of the model you are applying, whether it is Wakala, whether it is Modaraba, whether it is the hybrid, whether it is the WAC model, they will all fit into these particular 3 core principles. Now if you look at the table, there is stapled document material. You can go to the part where you have the puzzle or the crossword. There are 2 crosswords there. The first one, the smaller one. Okay? Have you seen it? The one that has TAKAFUL terminologies.
Yes.
TAKAFUL terminologies. Is that okay? So, would you be able to complete the crossword? Okay. I will be getting back your assessment after the whole exercise. So if you don't know how to play it, you can tell me so I can help you. Is that okay? You can see across, you can see down. Is that okay? So what it means is that those words you see there are clues that tells you what a particular thing is. For instance, you know what gambling is called in Arabic, isn't it? I just mentioned just now. So if you know what it is called in Arabic, so number 2 there is that particular thing. Is that okay? And it says across, means you are going to write it on a horizontal basis, not vertical. You write in Arabic? No, don't write in Arabic. If you write in Arabic, then the number of words will not be complete. Yeah. So across will be like that. You write across like that, then down means you write vertically. Is that okay? Okay, that should take just 2 minutes. Spell it in English. There are Arabic terms, but you spell them in English. You know, one of the things in Islamic finance is you have to be used to the terms. Because the terms also have root words that tells you what to do. There's an issue?
Yeah, I think number 4 and number 3.
What number is that?
Because number 4, uncertainty is correct, right? Number 4.
Just a moment.
Across, uncertainty is correct. But number 3, down there, riba, right? Interest from riba. But unless if we change uncertainty to gambling, we see, and then we can put riba there.
No, I think it's in order.
Another one.
It's in order.
It's on order. Number 3 is riba.
Riba.
But I cannot put riba there because I is A there. But it's A. Like Ghara, right? Ghara. Number 4
It
is
depends on where you start from. because I have the solution.
really RIB. Oh, down to up. Riba, RIB.
Okay? The most important thing is...
Oh, maybe R.
Number 1 is what? Number 1 is what? Okay. Number 2?
Number 5. Number 2.
Number 2 is minus.
Okay. Number 3?
Number 3 is
riba.
4?
Ghara.
5?
5 ta'awud.
Okay.
6 tabarruk.
Okay.
How to write down?
Yeah.
The spelling? I just showed you the spelling earlier.
This is the spelling?
No. See? All right, while we complete that, you recall just now in the short video, Isam was trying to explain to Abdullah the difference between TAKAFUL and the conventional insurance. And he had also mentioned about the fact that, you know, the way the funds are mobilized is important. Even the way the funds are, you know, disposed is also very, very important. But we can make, you know, these 6 clear-cut distinction between the two, which makes it very, very clear to you. This is actually taken from the book by, you know, I don't know if you have been given a copy by Sheikh Ismail Azman, you know, the one he did for the Malaysian Investment Institute. A very good book. I actually got a copy from the institute here. And these 6 points have been explicitly made there to distinguish between TAKAFUL and insurance. The first one there is that the contractual models in the two, you know, would be very, very. We have mentioned in the case of TAKAFUL just now that we have the hybrid, we have the WAC, we have the Mudaraba, we have the Wakala model. Is that okay? In the conventional insurance, it will not be like that, because there, once the insured pays to the insurance company, the money belongs to the insurance company. Whereas in the TAKAFUL model, it is actually owned by the participants who contributed the money. In terms of underwriting, in the typical conventional insurance, what they do is they underwrite any type of risk. It is risk driven, except the risk is too large or too big, or perhaps the activity is such that it's against the law, then they don't want to cover. If not, they will calculate the risk involved through the actuaries and they will tell you what premium you need to pay. But that is just it. It means it is basically driven by the capacity of an insurance company to underwrite that particular risk and see what they can get from that. But in the TAKAFUL, it goes beyond that, because you have to ensure that the activity is also Sharia compliant. Is that okay? You cannot just cover any activities because it has a lot of financial benefits that it will bring to you. The underlying also has to fulfill the tenets of the Sharia. Claims are almost the same. The moment any eventuality occurs, claims would have to be paid. It is the same also in the TAKAFUL as well as in the conventional. It's just that extra care needs to be taken, again, in the case of TAKAFUL. There is a short case that we'll be looking at later on, which I'm going to ask you. If somebody commits suicide, for instance, and he has a life insurance policy, and the insurance policy says if he's dead, he should be paid. But now he has committed suicide, and suicide is against Sharia. Is that okay? So I would wish that you respond to that later on. In terms of fund management, we have said that you cannot just channel funds into any type of business, because, you know, the TAKAFUL, you have the participant investment fund, you have the participant risk fund. The investment fund, the Mudaraba part of it in the hybrid model, will be channeled into investment. So the management of such funds will come with a lot of disclosure, and of course you also have to ensure that it is ethical and it is in compliance with the Sharia. The accounting and finance activity also differs between TAKAFUL and insurance, because the way you account for TAKAFUL is different. Now, the money does not belong to the insurance company, it belongs to the participants' owners fund. So you cannot just write all expenses against the profits. It has to be written against the share of profits of the TAKAFUL company from the Mudaraba share that it gets. Then, of course, the general management will expect that in its entirety, all these are in line with the Sharia dictates. So, within the few minutes we have, I would wish that we go to case A. You can see case A. I think it's just it's on comparison between TAKAFUL and insurance. Case A. So there is a note. There is a place there where we have put notes. That is where you are going to write your answers. Is that okay? Don't worry, your handwriting may even be far, far better than mine. Is that okay? We are all used to typing these days. Don't write in Arabic also. My Arabic is not very strong. Right? Try to write in English. Then just straightforward answers to those questions. Don't try to do so much. Just to see if you have been able to grab the gist of the whole thing. you can discuss amongst yourself. If you are not clear, you want to clarify it out. And then if you have done it individually also, I would wish that you compare your notes so that instead of everybody speaking, I will just get the rows to speak. So it will be the answers for each row. TAKAFUL company place funds in A with the TAKAFUL company that is conventional. Just as you get insurance policy, the insurance companies also reinsure with the reinsurance company. Is that okay? But now you have a TAKAFUL company that will be SHARIAH compliant, but it is placing the funds in the conventional reinsurance company. And in the third instance, you have investment of TAKAFUL funds in the firm that engages in, say, prohibited business. What would be your view? The third group is not interacting among themselves. To start, you can, now they need your SHARIAH expertise. Okay, for the sake of time, the first one, which group would like to give an attempt? Since there are 3 questions, it will be one per group. So if you are very fast, you choose the simplest one. Okay. Yes. Which one? Which one are you choosing? The first one. Yeah.
Okay, right. So from what I read.
Is it your personal opinion or you have discussed between amongst yourself? Did they agree with your view?
No, we haven't really formally discussed, but I'll say okay.
Would I take that as your group's position?
To be simple.
Okay.
Okay, right. So from what I read, initially suicide, no argument among scholars that it is haram. Okay. So previously TAKAFUL operators in line with conventional insurance whereby they don't compensate the beneficiaries. But there is a trend towards still compensating the beneficiaries because it is in line with compulsory. Because if you don't compensate the beneficiaries, then it will cause harm to them, especially the wife, the children.
So our position is that if somebody commits suicide, the TAKAFUL company should still go ahead to pay that person because he has left some family members, maybe kids, wives, and things like that behind. Do you agree with that position?
No, sir. We can do simply, in order to because I don't know, but I don't know the correct answers. But to me, in order to because they are, I think for suicide's case, they just don't give this TAKAFUL to cover for suicide cases. I think so.
Okay, because it will be no difference.
No difference.
Between normal death and suicide.
I think
we have 2 minutes more. 2 minutes more. But yes.
Just forgive me if my opinion is wrong. But in the first place, the subscriber or the participants, the intent is in case of eventuality when he's not there, his next of kin should benefit from his contribution. So the point of exit, that is between him and Allah. But I think something has happened and then he has an intention and everything in that.
We have just mentioned
so, since
that
he has
one of the things that distinguishes the Islamic TAKAFUL from the conventional insurance is that this one is having SHARIAH as its underlying philosophy. SHARIAH is against suicide, isn't it?
Yes.
But this person took the policy with the intent that when he dies, his family, now he is dead. So he has fulfilled that condition for that. So that's what I'm trying to establish. So your point is
the near that his near is in
it's
case
left
he's not
between
there.
him and Allah.
It's between him and Allah.
So
but the
TAKAFUL company
near
has
is in
to
case he's
pay.
not there.
Okay,
And
let's get from the
at this point.
So I just want to clarify, before we take these kinds of, for example, TAKAFUL, we know the rules and regulation, right?
yes.
So we have to explain to them.
Yes.
So whatever in case happen, intentionally here.
Mhm.
So I think
If it is proven,
yes, it is
maybe
proven.
we see somewhere it just
Yes.
hangs its neck and okay.
I think no benefit at all.
No benefit at all.
Yes.
Okay.
We say the contract should address this issue.
Okay.
If the contract says the subscriber does not deserve this claim if he commits suicide, then we follow the contract.
Okay. I have to remind you
And the
again.
contract should be subject to Sharia.
And yeah, that's why I have to remind you that as participants, you said it in the beginning that you are assumed to be Sharia
Advisor.
Yeah, you are assumed to be Sharia advisor. Okay, we'll get the continuum for Dr. Dauda. Just 1 minute.
See, all your points are taken, but for the specification in the contract, there is what we call exclusion clause to the cover. So if it is stated in the exclusion clause that for somebody who commits suicide shall not entitle to this benefit, so there wouldn't be. So the exclusions are the main objects to any forms of objections to the contract. So
Okay.
this now presently, because of the controversies, the operators are putting the exclusions. The exclusion clause.
We have other sessions so that we don't get meetings where we can have discussions afterward. Then we have the board, there that you can write some. There is also a plain sheet there. You can note down the points because we are going to get that later. But basically, what we have documented is the fact that yes, the person would have to be paid, but not forever. It's just for some time, so that the immediate family, one, they are grieving because they have just lost someone. Two is the fact that he is also a contributor to that one. So for some time, he will be paid. How long that time is, the scholars have left to the discretion of the what's it called, the TAKAFUL operators. Again, based on whatever mentioned in their contract. But they have given allowance that when they are grieving, and they may also have dependents, then they should, be given something. The other two questions I've just mentioned briefly is that if there are no TAKAFUL firms around, it's permitted also for a TAKAFUL firm to place its funds in a conventional funds. So at least to protect the funds. And the last one is that can they invest in Aram, whatever? Let's say, for instance, somebody is selling a core and things like that. Can the TAKAFUL, What again scholars have said is that the funds are divided into two. There is a policy, that is a participant investment fund, and there is a participant risk fund. The investment fund, the opportunity cost is not zero. You just don't leave it, idle. But what they have done, and that's the ruling of the SAC, is that if the content of Aram is not more than 5% in that particular circumstance, you can still go ahead. But it happens that based on Dow Jones index, for instance, or even the Malaysian index, some companies may not be classified as Aram now. But as time goes on, they now see that their activities now become Aram, meaning they have gone beyond the threshold. In that case, you would have to divest. Take your investment away from there and move it into some other place. Is that okay? Of course, these issues, scholars will keep having opinions, but this is what we have documented. Okay, so we draw a curtain on this session. I think the next session would be by Dr. Dauda, and he will be talking about the categorization of the TAKAFUL. So. So sorry, please, I will get your assessment from you. That's why I asked you to write on the paper then. Is that okay?
I'm back on stage. Yeah. So this time up, we are discussing the categories of TAKAFUL. So I guess here we want to discuss the types of TAKAFUL. So I want to refer you back to the seat we used last time. Case study. Let's start. Case study. Are we here? So here, in that case study, we want to identify the type of TAKAFUL that is in that contract. Before we talk about model, another contract. Now we want to talk about is the type, the kind of TAKAFUL that the product is. Type of TAKAFUL. Identify in case one, what type of TAKAFUL is that? No, that's Muda. That's model.
We
are talking in terms of general and family now. So identify each of the case. What type of, which category does each case fall into? Is it family or general? Case one.
So it's general.
It's general. Are we all agreeing it's general? Case B. Case B. Second row. Are you sure it's family? What feature makes you to think it's family?
Because the person who did the TAKAFUL for Umrah, in case of this person, disability or something, the family is going to be covered.
That's exactly why we need to discuss this.
Okay.
See, we have some features that make you to determine whether this is family or general. So in this case now, the key is still a general. You ask me why? Because it is a short-term protection. See, family in most cases are long-term, involves in long-term relationship. Right? In family, it's about you save for retirement, you have protection to a family against death or any other disabilities, and this is a contribution for a long period of time, right? But for a short-term contract, it's normally categorized or classified under because for Umrah, if you look at it, it's a short-term contract, right? So the important feature of any contract is the term of the contract. So in here, for general, I repeat again, for general it's short term, and for family it's mostly a long time, irrespective of whether it affects you or it affects property. So it doesn't matter. It does not matter whether it affects property or you use the protection against yourself to protect yourself, or what is important is the term covered by. Now you want to go into the specific of each of these TAKAFUL by what? By the nature of the contract of the fund itself. Here we discuss the makeup of the fund. In family TAKAFUL, what are the segregations involved in the family TAKAFUL? What is that? Oh, okay. Let me go into it.
Life assurance.
Okay, let me get into the next one. Good. If you look at this slide, you will see that we have 3 different kinds of funds here. Right? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And again, you will see that a fund is specific to TAKAFUL operator, right? And two funds are given within the participant side, right? Okay. Here, there's no mention of whether it is general or family, right? So now, from what you have taught before, how many funds does general TAKAFUL has?
Two.
What is it?
The saving funds and protection.
What of for family? 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in family TAKAFUL, we have 3 funds, right? And in general, we have 2 funds. So what is the purpose of these funds? So now I take again family TAKAFUL. So we now mention that if you look at the slides, you will see that there is a fund specific for risk, right? And we discover that there's another fund in the middle for investment. So the fund for investment is for capital gain, which it has a specific share of contribution over a very long time. So the purpose of this is for the capital contribution to gain earnings over a long time, in addition to the protection given by what? By the TAKAFUL. Following? Now I want to ask question now. That for who owns the investment fund? Participant, right? Because? So if you look at the shareholder side of the slide, from where the expenses derived.
Very true.
So the management expenses, right? So the expenses is reside in the shareholders fund. And as if you can recall, these expenses is being deducted upfront from where?
Wakala.
From the Wakala. That is for the what? The Wakala contract.
Yes.
So from the Mabaraba contract,
They get the investment.
yeah, it's like the share of pre-agreed share, right? Of the surplus from the underwriting and what? Underwriting and the investment activity. So that is it. We go back to the model of the contract, right? For the family TAKAFUL, it is basically meant for what? For the what? Long-term contract, right? General? So from here, we have seen the classifications of both family and general TAKAFUL. So I think here I will stop here for the purpose of time for the next session.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dr. Dauda. I'll just speak it from where I stopped. You recall you just mentioned about the categorization of the TAKAFUL in its various groupings. What I will be doing would be to go on from there to talk about the management of conflict of interest. Take a basic wakala, for instance. The owners of the funds will be different from the management, those who manage the fund. And this is also typical in our corporate finance, whereby the owners of the company will be the shareholders, then you have the board or the management running the show. At the end of the day, there is a likelihood of what we refer to as agency problem, whereas the management will take decisions that will not be in the best interest of the shareholders who are the owners of their company. Similar situation will play out here. Let's just listen to Isam again in his further discussion with Abdullah, just from where we started.
I guess in the Mudaraba model, the Mudaraba structure of Islamic finance is used. And the fund manager invests the surplus of the pooled money on the Mudaraba basis.
Yes, and the same is the case with the other models.
But I'm not clear about the hybrid model.
It is simple. If two different structures of Islamic finance, say the Mudaraba and the Wakala, are used in a single model, then it is referred to as a hybrid model.
Highlight the differences in different TAKAFUL models.
Certainly, in the Mudaraba model, the fund manager is entitled to a share in surplus, but not entitled to a salary or any fee. In the Wakala model, the fund manager is entitled.
Here, the first aspect is looking at is the Mudaraba model. And the argument here is that in this case, the managers will be entitled to share in the surplus. Is that okay? Because they are also having their own investment aspect that they are having in that particular circumstance. So they will share in the surplus. But let's see what happens under the Wakala.
To a share in surplus, but not entitled to a salary or any fee.
Okay.
In the Wakala model, the fund manager is entitled to a specific fee, but not the share of surplus. In the Waqf model, the fund manager is entitled to a salary, and in a hybrid model, the fund manager is entitled to a share in net realization as well as a fee for his or her services to manage the contributions and claims.
Yeah, we have mentioned earlier about three models. We have mentioned the Mudaraba, the Wakala, as well as the hybrid. But of course, there is also the Waqf model. And as explained just now, you have seen the various entitlements. The bottom line here, because in this session is talking about the management of conflict, is that okay? Is that there is the likelihood that the TAKAFUL operators would behave in certain ways that would be at variance with the expectations of the participant fund holders. So in this particular instance, there would be the likelihood of agency problem, like I've said. Of course, there will be information asymmetry. It's like in a typical mudaraba, even if you look at the Islamic finance industry, why the profit sharing mode of finance is not very prominent on the asset side of the balance sheet. One of the reasons would be because of this monitoring cost. Is that okay? So if the bank finances you, for instance, and you engage in activities, and at the end of the day, whatever you get from the activities, you give the return to the bank based on the funding they are given to you, and you will get the return based on your own effort. But the bank cannot monitor, virtually everybody. How will they know what you are doing? The monitoring cost can be very prohibitive. So in that case, they will shy away. So if we draw that analogy to this particular instance, the bottom line here is that ownership is different from management, and to that extent, there would always be conflict of interest, because the TAKAFUL operators would either be the muwakil or the mudari, whereby on the other side of the divide, you have the funds being provided by the TAKAFUL participants. So in that context, if you look at how they operate, the whole idea of who generates what type of products, who generates what type of contract, who generates how much should we charge, for the services and that, and all those stuff would be at the exclusive, disposition of the TAKAFUL operators, even though they are not the one who own the fund. So you would see, therefore, there is a lack of governance rights to some extent on the part of the TAKAFUL fund, TAKAFUL participants. So this, therefore, would perhaps have implication for the allegiance of the TAKAFUL operators, because they have shareholders also. So and they want to please the shareholders in their fiduciary responsibility. If I have to please the shareholders and I have to please the TAKAFUL participants, and I'm just the TAKAFUL operator, my employers are the shareholders. They own the company for which I work. Is that okay? So that in itself would make me naturally to align to their own interests at the expense of those who provide the funds. This is even more prominent in the hybrid model. Now, what do we need to do to mitigate this kind of situation? Of course, there are a lot of suggestions. IFSB also have come up with a number of standards on ethical business practices. But if you look at our IFSB 8, which is available on our website, a number of recommendations have been offered there, including having proper governance mechanism, is that okay, compliant with our standards or with IAIS, International Association of Insurance Supervisors, or even the regulatory and supervisory agencies within the country. They all have their mechanism that you have to follow. Not only that, you can also have your own internal mechanism that you have to enhance compliance to ensure that you do the right thing. So here we'll do something quickly, just to see if we have been able to pick one or two things. I hope you all have Wi-Fi connected. Is that okay? You all have Wi-Fi. Please just go to your browser and go to kahoot.it. Kahoot. Kahoot.it. Kahoot. Kahoot.it, are you there? Okay, just a moment. I'm going to give you a PIN number that you used to log in to answer the questions. Taking a while. Okay. Okay, I think it's loading. Okay, that's the number. Will you click on this number? Type this number in the pin 391228. 228. If you are in, I will know. Nobody's in yet. Then you have to put your name or your nickname, whatever. Okay. Ifa is in, June is in, Faiz is in, Rose is in. Oh, bro. Okay. Who else is not in? Can I start? Who else is not in? I've done with the players. Okay, Jibril is in. Abdurrahman is in. Who is missing? Okay, I'm missing. Sister Taslima is in. Okay. Abdul Qadir is in. Who else is not in? Okay. Press for time. Five is in. Okay, you are in now, right? Is this sharp? Wait. Okay, everyone is in. Alright, so we can start. Okay, question 1, are you ready? Okay, you look at the question on the screen and you choose the answer. Which among these is not a core principle in TAKAFUL? So, on your screen you will see these 4 options, not the question. You have to choose one. You have 12 seconds more. You have to choose one of those. Okay, that is done. Okay, you have to be fast. The next question. So what's that? Just wait. We can get the results of this. Okay, for this, let's see. Those who got it are Salam, Ifa, Rose, June, and Faiz. But it will give you the score based on, the I one that you scored. Okay. All right. Let's have one more. Let's have one more.
This is enough.
Let's have one more. Okay. Session 4. Okay. All right. So that is just a test run, right? So session 4.
What's the pin number?
Just wait. It's going to give you the. Okay. Okay. So once it gives the pin, that's the pin. Will you go into count again? 74430. Okay, let's do this quickly. Okay, is everyone in? Very sharp. Who else? Can I start? Abdul Qadir is there. Shah is there. Who else? Everybody. Okay, let's start. Okay, there are 4 questions here, and this relates to this session we have just had. Okay? TAKAFUL undertakings are confronted with various conflicts of interest as a result of okay?
Time up.
That is gone. The next question. So, Jubril was the fastest in that instance, profusely followed. Okay, this is the next question.
Why the
While the participant is interested in the claim payment, the shareholders are having. You don't have to say the answer, just choose it. Okay, let's see. Okay, alright. That's it.
because he's a pro.
Okay, we'll explain that. In statistics, research is an outlier.
He's qualified.
Okay, let's see.
Which option is participants governance right to vote at general meetings? Option
Okay.
Wow.
It's not the previous, it's another result. Not the previous one. So the trend looks the same. Okay? And the last one. Now, before we go to the last one, the essence of these questions is not just to make trial. It's not a lottery. It's just to see if you follow the discussion. Is that okay? You recall we have said conflict of interest would always arise because certain people have been saddled with the responsibility of managing the funds, whereas the funds are contributed by another person. If it were a purely, kind of mutual arrangement, the essence of TAKAFUL, which we said is the fundamental basis for TAKAFUL in the first instance, this issue would not have arisen. Is that okay? Because, they are doing it for the essence of mutual assistance. But if you look at a typical hybrid model, what would happen is that there are 2 contracts here now. So on the one side, the TAKAFUL operator is operating on the Wakala model, in which they get their agency fee and so on and so forth. And anything that happens to the funds, if somebody makes a claim or whatever, it's not really, their own headache. They only get the fee for facilitating the procedures. Whereas on the other side, where they act as Mudari, there they can share, profits and surplus, as the case may be. The point we are trying to make here is that in that particular instance, it leaves little or no room, especially the TAKAFUL operator becomes so big. It leaves little or no room for the TAKAFUL participants to have a say in how things are carried on. And that in itself is a manifestation of the fact that there is a conflict of interest. Let's see the last one, which is the 4th one. TAKAFUL operators should adhere strictly to one of the following with respect to investment activities. Anyone, you have 2 seconds. It says nobody gets the answer. Okay, before we go to that, let's look. They should adhere strictly to one of the following with respect to investment activity. They should actually adhere strictly to Islamic ethical principles. Is that okay? They should easily. Yeah, here the governance code of conduct may not necessarily be the Islamic code of conduct. Is that okay? It may also be the conventional and may not cater for the specificity of the Islamic, insurance practices. What we have observed again, perhaps at the IFSB level, is that not that the Basel Committee of Banking Supervision is not doing enough, not that IOSCO, International Organization for Securities Commission, are not doing enough, not that IAIS, International Association of Insurance Supervisors, not that they are not doing enough, but we have seen that there is the need to cater for the specificity. We have our own peculiarities. There is another layer of screening that we go through. So the governance code of conduct will not mean that all what is there will be at variance with what Islam says, but perhaps they may not be going as deep as that. Okay? It can be contested.
Is that why we are not picking both?
Yeah.
We are confused
Yes.
a bit. Why we are not picking both?
Are you suggesting that for investment, they did not don't have to present to board of directors, for example?
We said here, they should adhere strictly to one of the following with respect to their investment activities. Governance will be more on their operations, will be on their control, will be on how they do their business ethically and so on and so forth. But this will be all encompassing in a way. So that this question says one. So would suggest to me as your student that this section that's it. Like I said, if it says which among these is odd, I would have said neither. You know, if it says if this one is not there, is that okay? That an Islamic TO should address strictly to which among the following. Then in that particular instance, neither will be the answer here. Sorry, both will be the answer.
Yes.
Sorry, both. I mean both.
Yes.
Both will be the answer. Is that okay? Both of these two. Is that okay? But again, it's just to test whether we are following or we are not following. I think that's the essence. It's not an exam that you get some marks. Yes, brother.
Can there be any conflict between governance code of conduct and Islamic ethical principle? Can be any conflict between both?
It's possible. Like I said, what we have realized is that when we write our standards in our organization, we already have existing standards that have been written for the conventional. We can easily just take them. But we see at times that they don't cater for our own specificity. For instance, insurance would say you can also have mutual insurance, which will look more like our own, whatever. But it's not, the fundamental is not that the investment into which they put funds has to be Sharia compliant. So they will have their code of ethics that says that participants should also get a share for their put there. But Islam will go beyond that to say that it's not about the economic potential that has got, but also as it complied with the basics of the Sharia. So here, to a reasonable extent, there may not be conflict, but there is a possibility. Okay. If you look at our standards also, what we do often is just to pick up from where they have stopped and see what they have not included. Okay, we have just about 2 minutes more, if I'm not mistaken, or 3, if Dr. Dauda will not mind. Can we take a short look at the case B that we have there? It's a very short case. It's called ethical. Is that the next one? Let me see. Supposed to have a case. Yeah, let's quickly look at that. You know, the ethical business practices in TAKAFUL. Okay. While we are having that for the perusal, what we have noted also is the fact that to avoid conflict of interest, there should be some reasonable level of disclosure. Is that okay? You should be able to tell TAKAFUL operators what, the TAKAFUL fund, TAKAFUL participants, to what extent their funds will be channeled. You have to tell them what their rights are. You have to be able to tell them into what investment you are putting their funds, and so on and so forth. So, to the extent that that is not done, there may also be the possibility of conflict of interest later on. So what this case is trying to say is that when you look at that briefly, adherence to professional ethics and appropriate business conduct is important in the observation of the fiduciary duties by the TAKAFUL operators officials at all levels. So they need to ensure that the officials fully understand and undertake to preserve and uphold the sanctity of the aforesaid TAKAFUL core principles. So you see, TAKAFUL operators don't do everything on their own. At times they outsource. You have agents. You don't get to see the TAKAFUL company itself. You see their agents, their brokers will come to you. At times they have the IT firms who do this insurtech and so on and so forth. Is that okay? At times they have people who help them with the actuaries, who price, you know, what the TAKAFUL charges or premium should be, and so on. So when they outsource to these people, the point is, in what ways may the following officials or agencies be prevented from violating ethical business practices expected of them? What do you think can be done? I think I've mentioned some of these earlier. So you may wish to write in the note provided. Again, there is no wrong or right answer. There is a place where I provided the notes. Just put 1 or 2 or 4 points there that would show that you have really followed the discussion. You can discuss with your mates, not with Prof. I'm going to bring the camera to face you. It's even exempted because we are using our book to do this. So, yeah, we have drawn so much on our corporate governance write-ups. No, I thought you said this one. You can put on this one. Right? You know, for the brokers, they'll come to you and tell you a lot of financial information, not financial education, because their brokerage is tied to the number of insurance deals or TAKAFUL deals that they can get. So they don't get to tell you all the things you need to know. For instance, they also come with very complex documentation, and at best what we do is we just sign and they tell you a lot of things. At times also they don't tell you. Let's take for instance a very simple example like pension. That, okay, and they come to you to say that they have this arrangement and this that. They don't tell you that the pension funds, unlike the conventional, whereby it is tied to the contribution, you know, to the benefits. This one is tied to the performance of the fund. So what you get is not necessarily, you know, what is fixed. It depends on how, you know, things are done. And we have mentioned earlier, if you recall, on the exclusion clause. Is that okay? They will not tell you all those because they are just too interested to get as many deals as possible. Then the actuaries may have found something wrong in their pricing and they are not disclosing to the supervisory agencies. That also will not be very, very ethical. If you look at it from the point of view of the investment unit of the TAKAFUL operators, yes, we have the participant investment funds, participant risk fund. Now the investment aspect, which is the Mudaraba leg of the contract, would also presuppose that the investment they are going to put money into will be Sharia compliant in its entire ramification. But again, you know, if the proper disclosures or proper governance mechanism is not put in place and nobody is checking, and again because the TAKAFUL participants do not have that direct, you know, access to know what is going on, tendency may be there that these funds are not channeled into proper uses. And of course for the IT, it's also very prominent. These days you get a lot of, you know, unsolicited calls, messages. Somebody has sold your data somewhere and things like that. And that also will create a very, very big issue because they may outsource that particular aspect of their transaction to another company entirely, which is not theirs. But the governance mechanism we have will be covering the TAKAFUL operators. The essence of this is to say that they should, by right, because those agents are acting on their behalf, make sure they are clear as to what these ethical or these governance mechanisms are, so that they can also comply with. It will make no sense, or to make a mockery of the whole thing. If the TAKAFUL operator complies, but their agents somehow, do not fulfill this compliance requirements. So, like I've said earlier, among the things that we have mentioned in IFSB 8 is to ensure a proper governance structure is in place. Is that okay? And in IFSB 10 also, we have also even mentioned the role that the Sharia governance needs to play in this. In which case, we look at the Sharia board and a very important role that they need to perform in this particular instance. TAKAFUL is not a very prominent sector as banking, especially in most jurisdictions. So at times they don't even have a separate supervisory agency that looks at the activity. I think in the case of Malaysia also, it's packed somewhere under Bank Negara. Is that okay? And in most jurisdictions it will be like that. So at times, to the extent that the rules or the standards that are used for a particular sector is not in violation to the peculiarity of the operation of the TAKAFUL operators, then that also would apply. But it has come to the fore that they need a specific standard of their own that captures the peculiarity of the operation. They get the funds first, before claims can come later, if at all there will be any. So the nature of their operation means that they are very, very liquid and they provide funds to the other sectors. Capital market, they are very active in school and they're also very active in the Islamic banks in terms of providing some form of financing on the funding side. They are also very active as corporate PSIA, profit sharing investment accounts holders because they have a lot of funds. But the point here is, if their activities is not well calibrated to fall in line with Sharia activities, and if anything happens, then it will cascade. We are carrying out the current research on systemic links to show that all these sectors are actually interlinked. And if anything happens in one sector, definitely it will affect the other sector. So you can imagine if the TAKAFUL industry gets to have certain issues, then that affects the kind of funding. Or perhaps they have to draw down a lot on their banking deposits. That will have implications for the liability side of the bank and would also have implications for the funding, for the asset side of the bank. If the TAKAFUL cannot provide funds, the bank cannot finance. If the bank cannot finance, households cannot get loans. Households cannot get loans, the manufacturing sector cannot thrive. If the manufacturing sector cannot thrive, the government does not get taxed. If the government does not get taxed, it affects its balance of payments, how it interacts with the rest of the world. So you see the systemic linkage. So at the end of the day, this will all have implications. So this is where we will draw the curtain on the session 4. We thought of going on a short break, but again, if you don't mind, since we are going to end around 1, can we just pull through? And since we started a bit late also, if you don't mind, so that this clock is not correct.
Yeah, it's 11:07.
So is it correct?
Yes.
Okay. I was saying 12. Am I not? Alright. So we'll have 3 more sessions, if I'm not mistaken. I've got 7 in all. And Dr. Dauda now would be. Are you okay if we don't proceed on break, or you want just a short? Do you have anything for break or not?
Yeah, we have lunch outside.
Lunch or
lunch.
breakfast?
No,
lunch.
breakfast.
And it's not time for lunch yet, is it?
Yeah, then it's okay.
So can we just proceed?
Yes.
All right. So Dr. Dauda will go on now with fair treatment, if I'm not mistaken. Then afterwards, I will be coming back to look at the disclosure practices in the TAKAFUL industry. Then the last session, of course, will be on the Sharia governance. It's IFSB 10. Prof would be very pleased to have your inputs, comment, and we are so glad to have you here. And our doctor, thanks so much for coming. Mr. Tastima, you didn't answer any of the questions. I can see your.
So you need to sign out, right?
It's okay. That would be another.
I'm back. That stakeholders. Let me ask you, who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders.
So stakeholders are like shareholders, participants, operators, regulators, yeah, community governance.
These are the related stakeholders. So, the mandate of TAKAFUL has the responsibility for fair treatment of all stakeholders. Right? If you look at the structure of TAKAFUL, we have a mixture of neutrality and stockholding. Right? The investors who put their money there to establish, and talking about investors, the shareholders. The shareholders who put their money there to establish TAKAFUL undertakings has some expectations, right? I, as a policyholder who subscribes to TAKAFUL product, also has some expectations. So, the responsibility of the TAKAFUL operator lies on how well they are able to balance the expectations of the stakeholders. And if you look at the structure of TAKAFUL undertakings, the participants are on the receiving side. They have no say. So, in this case now, the management are being appointed by the shareholders. So, if the policyholder receives an unfair treatment, the only thing they can do is not to subscribe to the product. But the question now is, how do we ensure the balancing and fair treatment of participants? For me, okay, I want to ask you, which one do you prefer? If you want to take a coffee, which one do you prefer? TAKAFUL or Malaysia? Let me ask you, why?
For religious purposes, and because values and are not material driven.
So in that sense, you have this, you want your protections to be in line with SHARIAH, right? And so here, it introduces the inclusion of SHARIAH introduces some additional thought within the TAKAFUL undertakings. So we now go to how do we ensure that the stakeholders get fair treatment? Yeah. As an investor, I want the maximum earning from my capital. As a participant, what do I want? I want my benefit to be paid as I told. And if you look at this, the objective is conflicting. Isn't that? Isn't that conflicting? The objective is conflicting. Because if there's a catastrophe, it shows it shows that they pay hard to be more. There will be less of surplus. Less of surplus to be given to the investor and shareholders, perhaps. At the expense of what? At the expense of the participants. So, how do you ensure that the participants get their deal at the right time, as well as the shareholders also get returns on their capital? It is the establishment of the governance structure. So, the governance structure of TAKAFUL is the right approach to ensure. So the governance structure established that the shareholder, the right of the shareholder should be protected, as well as the right of the participants. So, what are the governance structure on this? Again. No. For the management of TAKAFUL, they have allegiance most of the time to who? To their shareholders, to their clients. And the board of directors must ensure that the competence of those who are in place to govern the undertakings. So because of what you mentioned now, that you want a protection that is Sharia compliant, that introduced the Sharia advisors into the governance structure. As for the conventional insurance, the governance structure is only board of directors. So, for the Sharia compliance of the product and investment activity of the TAKAFUL undertakings, the Sharia input of the Sharia advisor is very important. So, this introduced the two governance structure into the TAKAFUL undertakings. So these two governance structure ensure that the fair treatment of the policyholders and the
participants, shareholders and participants.
The shareholders and the
participants.
So, as a subscriber of a product, a subscriber of either a general or family TAKAFUL, what is your expectation? The expectation, you want your claim to be paid at the right time. And because of this, you have your contributions. And assuming you put your contributions at the right time. So who design the product? And who determine the pricing? Who determine the product and who determine the pricing?
Governance.
So indicating that the TAKAFUL operators has some aligning incentives which may not be fair to the participants. So, especially in a long-term product like family TAKAFUL, so how does the participant monitor the performance of its product? These are the duty and responsibility of the governance structure in place to ensure that there is transparency and the risk management framework, effective one, is put in place to ensure that the fair treatment is met to the participant as well as the shareholder of the undertakings. So with this, the fair treatment of the stakeholders are the main responsibility of who? Of the TAKAFUL operator and the governance structure established by the board of directors. Now, these are the outings, the empty we want to take the quiz together and we before we proceed on the quiz, why do we ensure the fair treatment? Because if I get my product, if I get my claims paid in time, I will continue to subscribe. The reputation of TAKAFUL undertakings will be improved. I want my friend, I want my family also to key in into their product so that we can enjoy the benefit of their services, right? So meaning that fair treatment is important for the reputation of the TAKAFUL undertakings. And if they get reputation, there will be repeated purchase. And repeated purchases, what? They will have profit. And this will, there will be continuous improvement in their performance. So that is the essence of having a fair treatment. It has a far-reaching advantage. So now, we now see that the governance structure is the structure that ensure that the stakeholders, especially the participants, get their due at the right time. And when we talk of the stakeholders, we mention of regulators as well, right? What is the functions of the regulators? Why is regulators important? Who are the regulators protecting? Anybody?
Stakeholders.
Regulator?
General stakeholders.
Yeah, they have the duty of general stakeholders, but because the participant has no say in the affairs of the undertakings, the regulators make sure that the operators put the right
protections to the participants.
They operate according to the rule. So it's now it's able to monitor them through what? Through the disclosures. And as a result of this, the actuarial has a role also. Because we make sure that the pricing has to follow who? The actuarial dictates. Because in competitions, where is this more important? In the competitive environment, especially in the GCC, there is this, what they call pricing undercutting. Price undercutting is that, okay, because you quoted for this particular cover, and quoted you so that I can pay the customer. result of this, there is the fund will not be sufficient to pay the claim when it starts to pay the claim. So, and most of the time, what you see in their balance sheet is that the result is so cut. And you also see that, cut. Everybody understand cut? Cut? What is cut? Cut. Cut.
Current. Is it current?
Like learning.
K-A-R-E.
Okay.
So the result is cut. So, and what you see, after a long time, you see that they are able to pay back this fund. And it becomes a care as you like. And it depends on the long time ability to do that. So, what most of the regulators did now is that they make sure that there is strict rule to follow actuarial pricing. And they expect their actuarial reserve as well, their technical reserves. And how do this do? If they are able to correctly use the actuarial advice. And in the governance structure, actuarial is standard, recommend that actuarial should be part of the governance committee. Because the actuarial must input into every product, turning out by the operators. So we have three stakeholders now in the governance structure of TAKAFUL. We have the board of directors. Yes? We have the SHARIAH advisors. And within this governance committee, the actuaries are also included. So these are the way to ensure that the stakeholders are given fair treatment. SHARIAH advisor make sure that all the products are SHARIAH compliant. So as to avoid what? Reputational damage, which is the essence of TAKAFUL. So I put some quiz into the table.
Can you give, for example, the parameter for the fair treatment? What does it mean by fair treatment for stakeholders?
As a participant of a TAKAFUL scheme, I need my claim to be paid at the right time. There is, in the TAKAFUL model as well, there is availability for software. And the management get their remuneration from the Wakala fee. That's in case of Wakala model. In case of Mudaraba model, they have the Wakala arrangement for the upfront in the PRF and Mudaraba for the surplus in the in the investment earnings. So they have a share in the investment of the investment activities. So where the fair, in this case, in the structure, where the fair treatment comes in is that you discover that what we discover in the survey we did, we discover that there is no limit, there is no cap to how the TAKAFUL operators dictate the Wakala fee. So what they did is that initially we thought that when we saw that most of the PRL, policyholder funds are always in deficit, and they go for court, and we discovered, is the model viable or not? We initially thought that this model is not viable because we see deficit, that we expect the policyholder funds to build reserve over time. But instead of building reserve, they are increasing deficit. So now we discover that
Wakala model.
Yeah, for Wakala model, yes. What we discover is that after the payment of claims, for that period, especially for the general TAKAFUL, what we do is that they use the Wakala model to remove all the funds, the remaining funds from the they transfer in form of management fee, performance fee, everything into the shareholders fund. So what's left is deficit. So this is exactly where the deficit comes in. So when, assuming we have surplus this time around, so because surplus comes when the claims is not so much. But when we have much adverse claims, it results in so if what we preach and the IFSB preaches in the solvency standard is that there should be continuous reserve to build the reserve over time. But you hardly see that. What you see is that after the claims for general, for short times, the revenue is drawn off. And the effect is that the policyholder fund is in perpetual. So this is where the question of fiduciary responsibilities comes in. So as the manager of the fund, they have responsibility to hold beside what they are expected to get from the house. They have responsibility to manage the fund judiciously. So this is where exactly where the problems come in. They manage the fund at the expense of the participants. In favor of what? In favor of the shareholders. So let's look at these questions together. I will read it. Whoever has the answer. So this is to test our understanding. Number one, TAKAFUL undertakings are confronted with various conflicts of interest as a result of, number one, proprietary structure of the TAKAFUL entity. Number two, hybrid structure between mutual and proprietary entity. Three, mutual structure of the entity. Which one? Well,
One.
One is a proprietary structure. Two. It's number two. The conflict of interest arises in TAKAFUL because of the hybrid structure. Of what? Of the mutuality and proprietary.
It's both, right?
Yeah.
When you combine,
What's
This is exactly what causes conflict of interest. Because in mutuality, what we expect that the participant owns the entity. So that because TAKAFUL is an hybrid structure between the mutuality exists where? In policyholders. Mutuality exists in policyholder form because of the concept which he has explained before.
In what? Sorry, I didn't get it.
Mutuality. Explained in policyholder form.
In policy.
Holders form because the participant pool their resources together. Policyholders form. PRS. Yeah. So in real mutual structure, there is no shareholder. Right? It's only the participants. So then here, the hybrid structure makes sure that there is two major stakeholders, and one is in favor at the expense of another. So that is where the conflict of interest arose. Number two, in TAKAFUL operations, the conflict of interest arises between the participant and shareholder because whereas the participant is interested in the claim payment, the shareholders are interested in any of the three charity donations interest, two, commercial interest,
Commercial.
commercial interest, right?
Yes.
All right. Move on. Number three. A typical TAKAFUL undertakings has two-tier structure. That is segregation of TAKAFUL participant fund and TAKAFUL operation fund. This is to ensure what? Number one, the demarcation of rights and obligations between the regulators and the TAKAFUL operators. Number two, the demarcation of rights and obligations among TAKAFUL participants. Number three, the demarcation of rights and obligations between the TAKAFUL operators and the participants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Question 4. Under which arrangement can TAKAFUL participants take part in the governance of TAKAFUL undertakings through voting right in at undertakings general meeting? Number one, hybrid structure with proprietary company as TAKAFUL operator. Number two, pure mutual structure. Number three, both one and
Pure mutual.
Participants can vote.
Well, pure mutual.
There's a model in Sudan. See, what they operate in Sudan is pure neutrality. That is why you hardly see any. It's pure Tawun. And they have representation in the general meeting because they are operating pure neutrality.
Cooperative.
Yeah, cooperative.
Pure mutuality, you mean soccer?
No, well, WAC is different. See, why I did not mention WAC before is that if you look at the WAC arrangement in Pakistan and South Africa, it's the same thing as I will do there. Pure neutrality. Yes, Tawun. And the pure, what they do is that they operate in Ghana.
So participants are considered as shareholders?
They are part of their they are not shareholders. They are stakeholders. And they have representation in the general meeting. There's no shareholders. We don't have shareholders.
Oh, only participants.
Only participants. So and they have a general meeting. That's what they're doing.
And each and every one of them are all together, to each and every one of the participants.
No, they have their arrangement. I don't know.
Or maybe only the operators or.
So what happens is this: the participant holds assembly and they make representation. They have this, so they are represented. They have representation in the governance agreement. So they manage the entity, the fund. So
Participants themselves?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
So,
it's
the
like
participant appoints the
Manager.
managers and the control the manager.
They are represented where? In the board or what?
Yeah, that's the bulk. Yeah.
Is that a possibility that so as you have rightly mentioned, sir, in the hybrid,
yeah,
we know there will be a problem with the BOT, the Sharia advisors and actuaries, because they will tend towards the operators themselves. So if we have hybrid and we make sure that the participant has a say to decide who are the BOT, who are the Sharia advisors, and who are the actuaries, can we solve that problem through that way?
That is, you see, that is why the address to the standard is very important. Because we envisage the conflict of interest, and that is why, in that regard, we make sure that they don't play with disclosures, because they ensure that there's a parameter to design products, and before any product can be rolled out, they will have it starts to undergo pre-market approval, pre-approval process, and they will observe the actual input, the right pricing, the risks involved in the management of the fund, everything about the product before the product goes out. And they also ensure that there is periodic reporting. See, the only way to, in essence, the only way to ensure fairness is to follow the governance guidelines, reporting, internal risk management framework, because it's in every jurisdiction, in most jurisdictions now, there's nobody, no jurisdictions permits neutrality again. Besides that, because the corporate affairs in each country doesn't allow for neutrality. Even in jurisdictions where neutrality exists, the mutual structure has built over a long time. So when there is trust over a long time. So when the idea of TAKAFUL was initially conceived, the idea is okay, the participants come together, our own structure, but they now discover that there is no way the corporate arrangement in most people can accommodate it. That is why they come out with the two-tier structure, in which there will be a policyholders fund, and at one side, and the shareholder and TAKAFUL operator will manage both, and they will assume the position of asset management. But so the asymmetric structure, asymmetric information, conflict of interest that ensure this can only be managed by adherence to the standard.
But if we were to follow cooperative, for example, that can match the Sudan case, right?
It's only in Sudan.
Yeah. So this is where you can have it in the form of not a commercial institution, financial institution, because if you are a financial institution, you need to get the license, and then there are certain categories that you need to follow, certain requirements. But if you follow the cooperative structure, I think that can match. It may match the Sudan case.
The corporate arrangement in Malaysia, in other countries doesn't allow for it.
For cooperative, okay.
Yeah, doesn't
allow what?
It doesn't allow for because you cannot have a cooperative structure only. You must have whatever the corporate entity that you have. You must have a shareholders.
Yeah, what I mean is that not corporate entity, cooperative.
Oh, cooperative. Exactly, not corporate. Yes, exactly.
Sir, I've asked a question again that is it possible with the hybrid structure for the purpose of commercial growth that we should allow TAKAFULs to grow commercially? Can we have within the hybrid structure such that the participant can have a say over the BOT, over the Sharia board, whatever, such that they could be able to influence their rights?
It's possible if the regulations allow.
So as at present, we don't have.
There's no regulation. There's no regulation for it.
Maybe IFSB can give us.
Noted.
Yeah, so we can, all of us can exercise our rights.
Yeah.
So I think let's stop that. Demand is gone.
No, it's not. It's just taking a short term.
All right.
Let's
stop there.
We have 2 more sessions. What I'm going to do is, I have a full session and half of the next. I'm just going to combine those, and Dr. Dauda will hand up. And I think all this will take place in the next 30 minutes, so that we can get the lunch and get ready for summer also in good time. You've been very wonderful participants in this exercise, and I've also been taking notes of some of the things you have said. It's a 2-pronged kind of intervention. We do not claim to know it. In fact, at times we see things from a very broad point of view, whereas we look at the specifics. So we would not want to say that a particular jurisdiction is doing the right thing or another one is doing the wrong thing. So by the time you want to have a broad view like that, then you have no view also. But the feedback we get fits into our standards. But if you say something is standard, it is objective. It cuts across the device. So what we'll be looking at will be the last leg, which has to do with transparency and disclosure. Then I would move on to Sharia governance in that particular instance in our IFSB 10, where we talk about the principles of independence, competence, confidentiality, as well as consistency. I'll just wrap them up together because I think they all gel together. I tend to like this video a lot. We also often use it in our
Welcome to your first lesson about transparency. You might already know that trust and honesty are necessary for relationships to be established in public relations. But did you know that transparency and disclosure help practitioners to build honesty and trust? This lesson will introduce you to the concepts of transparency and disclosure and will aid you in gaining a better understanding of both through the use of definitions, descriptions of types of transparency and disclosure, and examples. Transparency can be thought about as open, honest, and accessible communication. It typically has 3 purposes. The first is to provide information to publics, but transparency can also be used to increase participation or communication between an organization and the public. And it can also be used to hold organizations accountable. However, transparency can be used deceptively. Examples of deceptive transparency can be found in this lesson. Disclosure is perhaps a little more difficult to define and explain, but it can be thought of as the intentional release of information in order to facilitate transparency, openness, access, and accountability. There are 2 types of disclosure. Full disclosure is the deliberate attempt to make available all legally releasable information, whether or not it's positive or negative about the organization. Sometimes limited disclosure, when not all information can be released, is necessary. Your lesson will explain situations when limited disclosure might be necessary.
Okay, we'll just have to stop it there because of time and go to some other more specific things. The point we want to bring up from here is like the issue of disclosure and transparency is very fundamental in the Islamic banking and finance industry. In fact, ethical practices would demand that whether the information is good or is bad, you have to disclose because information has to be accurate. And accurate as spelled would be, it has to be A, accurate, it has to be C, complete, it has to be C again, correct, it has to be U, understandable, it has to be R, reliable, it has to be A, accessible, it has to be T, timely, and it has to be E, easy to use. To the extent that we are not transparent, then the tendency of dishonesty will be there, and that will be a fundamental violation of the ethical expectations of Muslims as human beings, then as a party to a transaction. in the TAKAFUL industry, this is as important as in any other sectors of the Islamic banking and finance industry, because as mentioned in the video just now, it provides information to the public. So the TAKAFUL participants know very well from Adam, would he want to participate in your TO, or he wants to pitch its tent with another TO? He wants to know what are the peculiarities of the product you are offering, what are the terms and conditions, what are its rights, what are its obligations. If these are not clear from the start, that may lead to some misjudgment. And like I said earlier, that would always be found in instances where people do not, in the bid to leverage on the fact that as long as it is Islamic, people want to patronize, then we don't get to do our bits by telling all what we should. Then it increases participation, because if people know what they are getting into anyway, then they are taking informed decision. And participation is not only fund-wise, because they also have to assess what you are doing. They also have to give feedback to say, yes, what you are doing is in alignment with their expectations right from the time when they want to engage with you. And of course, ultimately, it promotes accountability, which is another very fundamental ethical practice in Islam, that whatever we do, we take responsibility for it. So the difference between transparency and disclosure at times, will be very low. People at times use them interchangeably. But what we have also emphasized in the standards and what is mentioned here is the fact that disclosure can either be voluntary or involuntary. And if you look at typical accounting, whatever, there will be certain things that you are mandatory. It's mandatory for you to disclose. There are some that, well, it's optional to you. But we take a broader view of it in this instance, that it is those things that you intentionally release, those information you intentionally release. Whether you are compelled to do so is another thing, but even out of your own volition, you have released it with the intent of facilitating transparency. So it will be like disclosure itself is the trigger of transparency. If there is no proper disclosure, then transparency also may have been impaired in a way. And the essence again is to promote openness, access, as well as accountability, as I mentioned earlier. Now, you recall that I did say earlier on that in a typical TAKAFUL operation, the participants may not be having the same rights as well as the shareholders because of the fact that they lack governance rights. They don't get to participate in most of these activities that go on there. So what this would have as effect for them is that they may instance not be aware, if there is no proper disclosure, if their funds are commingled with the shareholders' funds. So there is the participant funds and there is the shareholders' fund. The participants are the owners of the fund, the shareholders are the owner of the TAKAFUL operation. When the funds are commingled, it is more likely that disclosure will be impaired, and more of the disclosures will be those that favors the shareholders because they are the owners of the fund. And an average TAKAFUL operator may care less, because at times what drives us, based on our study also on client protection in TAKAFUL practices, a working paper will be issued this December, inshallah, before the year ends out, is the fact that, again, we get motivated to participate in TAKAFUL because we are Muslims. I don't want to do with conventional, I want to do with this. And the mindset is the aspect of the mutual assistance. The fact that you also have funds, some into the participant risk fund, some into the participant investment fund. We don't care so much, or investors don't, participants don't care so much about that aspect. So if you don't care, then nobody would, perhaps care also. So when commingling of funds happen, or what type of investment policies are put in place, this also they may not be able to do, because as investors you are also having your own risk preference. Some are very risk averse, they don't like so much risk, they like small return, but something that puts their heart at rest. But some are also very risky in nature, but this also will not be declared. Another one is the issue of complex documentation. You see, there is a whole lot of things. Sign it, and we keep signing, and we all do it anyway, especially when you install software. Next. And even if they say, yes, you are going to pay $25,000 by installing, next. And after that, if you don't pay, you go to jail, next. We just keep saying next. So this also happens in documentation. Profusely here, maybe, the fonts are so small the documents are so thick, the legal wordings are so complex, and people just get signing into what they do not really know. So then, of course, you have to look at it from the point of view of the TAKAFUL operators. The cost benefits of disclosure, cost benefit analysis. At times, to comply with the level of disclosure that we demand may not be a true reflection of the level of operation of these TAKAFUL firms, because they are still operating at the margin. Based on our last stability report, TAKAFUL sector grew by 12% in 2016-2017. Hopefully this year it will also grow, but it still accounts for a very small percentage of the global Islamic financial assets. So it's still a very small sector, as it were, though it's growing very fast. What that would imply, therefore, would be that these firms will be too small to the extent that if you force the disclosure requirements, if you make it mandatory on them, you know, as we have done for the insurance sector, they may not be able to meet up with this particular issue. Then there are also issues with dispute resolution. For instance, there should be proper disclosure as to what are the rights of the participants in the event. Of course, we always say in the unlikely event that issues arise. So what happens? What of issue of transparent pricing? How are they sure that what you are charging them, you know, on the wakala fee, for instance, is an actual reflection of what you should, you know, be charging, or what you even pay as the policy premium? So issue of transparent pricing, or what we call fair pricing, issue of dispute resolution, data protection. What happens with the data of the TAKAFUL, you know, operators when they supply that to the TAKAFUL participants, when they supply this to the TAKAFUL operator? So all these issues are what should be looked into, especially if you break it down also to the family TAKAFUL, which is a fairly long-term relationship, as you know earlier mentioned, because you want to stay with the TAKAFUL operator for, you know, a relatively long time. That is what benefits you even as a TAKAFUL participant. But in that particular instance, what we are saying is, if there is no proper disclosure, then it means the incidence of that long relationship would also mean that you have to bear the consequences of improper disclosure for a very long time. So what? Sorry, I'm pressing this. So what we have, therefore, is that disclosed information, therefore, should have this attribute. It should be accurate. And accuracy here is a measure of exactitude. Is that okay? Correctness is another thing. Correct means it is the right thing. For instance, correct may mean that go this way or go that way. Invest in this, invest in that. But accuracy would be the reflection of exactitude. Correct means it is right. Accuracy means it is exact. Is that okay? For what has been reported. Then it has to be complete. Just now in the video they were talking of full or partial disclosure. If it is not mandatory that full disclosure should be made, at least the mandatory one should be complied with. But if it will benefit the policy participant or fund participant, why not? It should be understandable. Oftentimes, participants are inundated with, you know, unsolicited information. It's so huge that at the end of the day, they don't even know what, you know, is being said there. So maybe in some instances, it has to be in languages they can understand. In fact, I've attended a workshop where somebody was even arguing that financial statements should be prepared in symbols. You know, then people started taking him up. If I want to account for these furnitures, how many chairs will I drop? Or how many, you know, tables will I drop? And it traced back to the history that when financial accounting reporting started, that they were actually using a pie to represent and say this proportion is what it is. So for somebody who doesn't understand figure, he can see the size. He knows which one is getting bigger. We are not saying we should go to that basic level, but what we are saying is that it can be in different languages, it can be in abridged formats, it can be in some other, you know, it can even be in audio, maybe the basics, where people, you know, can get to know. Then it should be accessible. People should not struggle to find it. You know, then you have to ask this, ask that, and you keep holding it as if it's something that they shouldn't know. And most importantly, if it is accurate, if it is correct, it is complete, if it's understandable to an extent, it has to be reliable. From what source is it coming from? So that when we rely on that information, we are taking informed decision. It should not be past oriented Of course, when we give information, it's an information about what are taking place. But what we're saying is, it's not something that are taking place years ago. It should be such that the information is fairly recent, so that from present to the future, we can take some informed decision. You know, in finance, it's always very funny, and I share this in my statistics class also. Finance data is different from every other type of data, because oftentimes in finance, it is the future that determines the present, whereas the present should determine the future. But you know, people can take decision now. If they start seeing signs that certain things will be happening to your firm in future, if they agree that the trend, then they can take decision now. So this has to be timely, and it has to be easy to use. If we take it further from there, I'll just move on to say that we can do a quick exercise. I don't want to bother you again with Kahoot. I think we have had enough Kahoot. You want to take Kahoot? Okay, I think, okay, we can take, let me see. We can take this puzzle first, then we'll go to Kahoot later. There is a puzzle on attributes of good disclosure practices. Have you seen it? What's finished? Attributes of good disclosure practices. Yes, that one, I think. So we'll see the clue underneath, across, and down. So you have, can I give an example? Okay, number one says right. If it is right, I don't know whether it is correct or whether it is accurate, or whether it is correct. You would know. So what it means is that for the number one, any option that you choose, you'll be writing it down. Down can be this way, you know, or that way. It will be vertical. That's what it means. All right. So you can also guess by counting the number of words and the option you have there, and know. While you do that, I'll set up the Kahoot. They shouldn't take that long. Oh, really? Okay, that's I created with the software. I wouldn't know. Well, I was doing this early in the morning, so I was. Okay. While we do that, let's just quickly move to the Sharia governance principles. Dr. Dauda will be running off with the fifth one. I'll just pick on four. Competence, independence, confidentiality, and the last one, consistency. Competence here, based on our IFSB 10 standard, is looking at the capability of a member of the Sharia board, that this attribute is very, very important. The character of the person is, in fact, the fundamental consideration. Must be an extremely honest person. He must be honest to a fault. You understand what I'm saying? So, because it requires a high level of integrity and fairness, and it should be somebody whose reputation precedes him or her. Is that okay? That no matter what is given to this person, if he looks at what reputation he had built over the years, he would not wish to trade that for anything. But those are very good attributes. That can be found in any person, whether the person has Sharia knowledge or he doesn't have Sharia knowledge. So what makes a Sharia board member even more prominent in his board is one of the provisions in the governance that talk about competence, that he should have diligence, capability, and soundness of judgment. Is somebody who is well versed, who is not strictly opinionated, but to a reasonable extent he has been found to be a fountain of knowledge across madhabs, and who to a reasonable extent also have a fair or sufficient knowledge of the workings of the financial service industry, so that he's not only looking at things from a strictly one point of view, but a fairly balanced point of view. He should be fairly independent, and this is one of the things that we do apologies. There have been a lot of noise, if I would say, regarding the composition of Sharia, but maybe not in Malaysia because it's well established, and over time, they have come of age in this area, but maybe in some other jurisdictions to say that yes, there will be instances where they may not be absolutely independent. Is that okay? Opinions may not be popular opinions, but rather than giving it, based on their own wisdom or for whatever reason is best known to them, they would not want to do that. But what we have in our standards is that the person who is appointed to the board should be somebody who will be playing a strong and independent oversight. Is that okay? He has capability to exercise objective judgment. In other words, he is not easily swayed, not by emotion, not by sentiment, but by the fact of what is presented and against the Sharia sources that is relying on. So no individual or group of individuals shall be allowed to dominate the Sharia board's decision making. In other words, they are equal. Even if they have a chairman among them, it's just, how do I call this? It's just the leader among equals. Somebody needs to coordinate, as it were. In case there is a tie, somebody of course needs to decide, as the case may be. But most importantly, it's not such that the board will consist of people whereby opinions of certain persons will be drowned or will be subsumed because there is another bigger figure in that particular board. Everybody is there in his own right or on his own merit. Then we also have issue of confidentiality. And before I go to this, let me just give an instance. There is this particular person, well known, well revered, well knowledgeable, well respected, and he was a Sharia advisor or a member of the Sharia board of a particular time, and he had to leave because he was not too pleased with what was going on. He felt that there are certain things which he felt were the right things, if he says, based on the Quran and the Sunnah, but his colleagues were more like, we have to look at the exigency of the market also. We cannot just blind our eyes to that. And on that basis, he decided to leave. This practice, which he frowned against, continued. And he felt he has a duty to voice it out because, like you scholars would say at times that you cannot control with your mouth, you control with your hand, you cannot control with your hand, you control with your heart and things like that. He did not want to correct with his heart or with his hand, he wants to correct with his mouth. So he suddenly, of course, because he also has Taskira and Usra and all this, so various opportunities he would voice out about this practice of this particular financial institution. So take note of that story. Now here, it says Sharia boards Sharia board members should ensure that internal information obtained in the course of their duties is kept confidential. In this particular case, what this person has done, in your opinion, would it be right or wrong?
He can give a general, rather than naming specifically, specific financial institution.
Prof, if you start talking about IIiBF, I would know, even if you don't mention, I would know you are referring to IIiBF. Because in Malaysia, you have so many banks, it's possible to do that. In places where you have one or two, there is a common saying in my local language, I don't know if it's, there are 3 people eating together, and they are supposed to eat with decorum, easily. Suddenly one of them was eating like a glutton. So the second person now complained that, please let us eat with decorum. And the third person said, oh, I don't know, you're also observing. so definitely we know it is the third person that they are referring to in that particular instance. There are instances where you can't cover that. So.
He is a Sharia scholar, I think he can I'm sure he can justify it.
I think he has to keep the information as much as possible. He can give scenario while talking to people in the public, but it should not be specific in as much as he's working with them.
The way I've presented the case now, would that make me liable or not? After this program, so which bank are you talking about? And things like that.
No.
Would I be liable for saying it the way I've said this just now?
No. Not really, because you didn't give specific information. It's just like a class structure. So if he's giving a class structure, even as a Sharia scholar, we give them the opportunity, flexibility to address issues. But it should not be specific.
Because the issue is fundamental.
It's fundamental.
It's what should be addressed, really.
And we know that even if he said it's wrong today, after a year it might be right. So there is no specificity. So flexibility should be allowed for scholars to discuss issues, but you should know its limitation. Maybe in class structure, even at the main bar, there are things you don't discuss.
Okay. So taking note of that, of those comments, from the floor, what the principle of confidentiality is saying is that by the time you come into contact with some information, in the ordinary course of you serving as a member of the board, that particular information, except otherwise made public, remains confidential. If at all it would have to be disclosed or referred to, it has to be in such a way that you would not have, put yourself into some issues. Like it said in Africa, if you have not said anything, nobody would ask you to repeat yourself. I think it's just simple logic, isn't it? So you have to say it in a way, like you have passed the message, but you have not, caused some other issues. And consistency is saying that there are times you belong to more than a board, and or perhaps, Ustaz has just mentioned now, you have given a fatwa or you have given a particular opinion. Of course, it may change because there may be superior argument. Context may differ. You may also have found consensus among, because at times when there is a consensus also, that's the popular opinion. So and things like that. So here, the Sharia board member should be consistent in the opinion that they provide in serving on the Sharia boards of different Islamic financial services industry, service providers. Consistency in this respect is related to competence and independence, as mentioned above, and is also a matter of professional ethics. Among all this, none of them is less important than the other. But I would think that the one that a Sharia scholar or Sharia board member may likely be susceptible to will be that of confidentiality, because there is a thin line between what is confidential and what is otherwise. So we'll take the Kahoot to see whether or not you have actually been able to know what is confidential or what is not confidential. So let's see if I have that. I think it's here. All right. Brother, are you running away? Okay, so let's see that. good to go? Yeah. Can we? Okay. There are 4 questions. I think there are 15 seconds each of them. Oh, I'm surprised. People. Okay, let's move. Prof, is it the network of your phone that is very fast?
Maybe because of the connection.
Okay, move to the next one.
What principles? Predictable external
Okay, one person chooses impartiality. Who is that impartial person? Okay.
I lost my connection.
Somebody is jamming the network now. Okay, let's see.